Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the session that we're going to be doing. My name is Scott Marfilius, and this is Kelly Fonner. We both work as independent consultants in the area of assistive technology. However, our background is in special education. Between the two of us, as we do introductions, between the two of us, we've covered early childhood handicap, primary, we've done middle school, high school, teaching assistants, a wide variety of different types of supports in that. And initially, I actually got started in the field of assistive technology, working with students with more severe, profound cognitive disabilities and physical disabilities. So the session that we're going to be taking a look at today with the science and the Common Core standards and more, taking a look at some apps and assistive technology supports for those students with more significant intellectual and physical disabilities. The handouts we did submit them, so they are available online on the Patents website. So you'll be able to download those, and that actually this time it will actually have the actual slides that we're going to be sharing as well. So
there's a lot of images.
You'll be able to see that. So feel free to ask questions as we go along or clarification of anything, and we'll jump in and get started. So the goals that we had for this particular session was taking a look at a variety of different adaptations can be done to actual print material that we're using in the area of science. We want to also expand your knowledge because obviously with the Common Core, there's a lot more emphasis on the writing aspect. And so we want to expand your knowledge in the use of writing adaptations in the area of science. We're going to view some of the different types of manipulatives that have been done to science materials. And then the other goal for this session is to experience some examples of oral reports supports through the software and AAC, Augmentative Alternative Communication supports. So to begin with, just to take a look very briefly about the science curriculum. First of all, what you will see if you start to take a look at the Common Core, you'll see that the Common Core, as far as specifically spelling things out in the area of science, is going to come when you get to grades 6 through 12. What you'll see kindergarten through 5th grade is that it's the science areas, well, and not just science actually, history, social studies, science, and technical subjects are integrated in the K-5 literacy standards. And so it's actually when we get to grade 6, as we move, grade 6 where you're going to start to see them split out. And on the web, there's going to be a one-page, two-sided handout available for you that lists what those Common Core standards are, 6 through 8, 9 through 10, and 11 through 12. So some of the things, what you'll see, the standards, just to kind of get you familiar with them, they're going to be spelled out in these 4 main areas. So the first area is going to be key ideas and details. And I'm not going to go over each of the grade levels, but to give you an idea, some of the things that they're going to be asked to do is to cite specific textual evidence to support analysis of science. They're going to be asked to follow precise multi-step procedures when carrying out experiments and taking measurements. In the area of craft and structure, this is when they're going to be determining symbol use, key terms, specific scientific or technical context when it comes to writing. In addition to it, they have to be describing a procedure, an experiment, or discussing it that they're doing. In the area of integration of knowledge and ideas, they're really going to be taking a look at the use of flowcharts, diagrams, models. So we're going to be incorporating those when it comes to the reading and the writing. They're going to be comparing and contrasting information that they gain from experiments. And then the last part, when we get to the range of reading and level of text complexity, it's all about by the end of grade 8 and of course grade 10, then in grade 12, that they're going to be reading and comprehending science and technical text at those grade levels. So those are just the Common Core itself. But then what we also wanted to do is make you aware of a resource that's available through IEP Resources. The Attainment Company does that. Diane Broder has a book out that's called Aligning IEPs to the Common Core State Standards for Students with Moderate and Severe Disabilities. So it might be a handy resource when we're looking at providing adaptations. And I'll just kind of start this book passing around as well so that you get a chance to take a look at it, to see if it's a resource you would want to add to your library. Okay.
So as I was mentioning as people were coming in, because we only have an hour and we had a lot of resources that we wanted to share with you, they're around the room. They are not takeaway prizes. but we wanted you to be able to see the things that companies like Attainment and AbleNet and Amy Solutions and some of the other companies that have materials available for us that fit into the things that Scott's just talked about have. Attainment's really one of the ones that's really leading the way. So a lot of the materials that are out there come from different curricula that Attainment has available. And some of the units that we've got here come from them. So one of the things that we often find is that it's about making it yourself or preparing things. And so it's always about, what's going on in the curriculum and letting that be your guide first, rather than you trying to make it up and making the unit on your own, which is kind of the old way of doing it. But guiding there, looking at what the materials are, what's the homework that needs to be done, what are the tests that have to be done, and what are the projects. And so as Scott and I go through the different examples with the assistive technologies and the apps, we're going to be looking at things like what are the kinds of things that people are doing for test taking, what are the things that people are doing for the writing assignments, and how are we looking at those things being modified for the kids that fit into the categories and the more have kids that have more significant disabilities and have physical challenges, intellectual challenges, and then all the other complexities that get added to it. Then we're always then looking at this idea of how can students participate academically, how can they participate socially, how can they participate communicatively, and at the highest level of independence as possible. And then as Scott talked about, how do you then have meaningful IEP objectives? Whoop, just went right to the end. We're just done.
Wow.
That didn't work out well. That's what happens.
You did say the hour would go fast.
We're just done, and go have lunch. Sorry about that. One of the things that we follow as we are looking at these, and I know a lot of people have been introduced to the SET framework as they've gone to different sessions here, is looking at what are the things that your student can do, what are so building upon their abilities, what are their needs, what are the environments that you're in, because we all have different situations. So whether your student is included in regular education classes as they're doing their science, whether you're doing that in a special education environment, we're still all guided by the standards. And then we're looking at what are those specific tasks, and then what are the tools that we need to be guided by the tasks. It can't just be looking at the tools first, because then we end up using tools for non-specific purposes. So we try to create a list of what are those kinds of tools, and we've done this by working with the teachers that we work with in classes and looking at science. And one of the really nice things about science is that it often is a much more open environment to try out different assistive technology tools and use them, and then we're able to find out what works and then move them into a math environment, move them into a English language arts environment, and really give them a good trial there. But we're looking at what are the things that we can do for diagram reading, and again, you're going to see these in the examples here. There's another book that's in your resource list, and again, this is one of the resource lists that's up on the website. June Downing is another author that she has worked, and her work has been primarily with students with significant disabilities. And this is a general list that goes across the curricular areas. So it's a nice list to work on if you're looking to target skills for your students. One of the other things that guides us in our work is this idea of the word participation, because it gets used a lot with our students with significant disabilities, and it often gets confusing. And I had mentioned earlier that when we look at participation, we can look at that academic or educational participation. We can look at the integration within the regular ed environment, but we can also look at their participation socially. And socially can be their participation behaviorally. So how do they understand receptively how to behave, whether they're in a large group, whether they're in a small group. So if they're doing science experiments with lab partners, and how big is that lab group, or if they're in just a paired instruction, or if they're in a one-on-one situation. And then how much support do they need when they're participating. And in this participation model, we've used a model that's from a bigger assessment participation assessment tool from Drs. Buchelman and Pat Miranda. Pat Miranda works a lot with individuals with autism. Dr. Buchelman works a lot with people who have augmentative and alternative communication needs, as does Pat Miranda. And again, this is from an assessment model. We use it from an implementation standpoint, and each one of these breaks down further, and the explanations from each of these areas is in the handout. But primarily what we're looking at is when you use this word participation, is focusing on, am I concerned right now about their academic participation? Am I looking at them participating in where they are? And so how I'm modifying their science curriculum is because of who they're participating with. And I might not be as concerned about the academic piece because I'm modifying it, and I might be bypassing their reading level so that they can be participating in content that is being presented at a higher reading level, but that they can be communicating and socially participating in a discussion so that I'm giving them vocabulary words, and those vocabulary words might be supported with images rather than just being supported with text. So let's take a look at some of those technologies. So let's kind of try and give you the foundation piece so that we can get into the technology piece. When we look at the different kinds of technologies, we look at categories of technologies, we do have a wide range of things that we use with individuals with significant disabilities. And so even though we're going to be talking about specific tools, it doesn't mean that because we show you certain ones that they are the be-all, end-all, or these are the ones that Scott and Kelly says are the best. It just happens to be that in this hour, we can't show you everything. So we use whatever it is that you have in your classroom. When Scott and I go out on consults to classrooms, the first thing that we do is take an inventory of your room and look to see what's on your computer, what's in your shelves, and take a look at what can we use to the best and widest that we can. And then we go shopping for what might need to fill the gap. What is it that you need? There's not a lot of specific tools that are just out there for science. There are kits, and we're going to take a look at those curricular kits and tell you a little bit about those things that exist. But then it's a lot of the open-ended tools, products like Clicker and Classroom Suite, where you're looking at bringing your curriculum into those environments and presenting them for things that might need to be enlarged, things that might need to be presented for someone that needs switch accessible materials, or things in a repeated environment, so that they get, repeated access to information. So it's not necessarily that there's a specific category in assistive technologies or apps that say these are science at themselves. We're always looking at how do we need to modify them in one way or another. So one of the things, again, from the work of June Downing is that we're always seeing how can we take the standard materials and add to them so they're more meaningful to the students that we're serving in our classrooms. Other things? So for example, you might have something, the traditional unit on frogs, and we're going to dissect frogs and all the different ways that we can do it. So it might be information that to build background knowledge before there's going to be the lab dissection of the frog that students are participating in. So we're always trying to build background knowledge. It might be from a book that's got the multi-layered approach, and it might be that your student can't handle the books for a variety of reasons. It might be that their level of use of books might not be familiar to them. It might be that books are things to be eaten, or books are to be thrown, or all of those things. And in a really simple thing, PowerPoint is a page turner. And so just taking images, really simple with the camera in your phone or with a regular camera, and taking pictures of those pages and putting them in a product like PowerPoint is just a really simple way to change pages of the book. And then we can get much more complex with it, but just in a really simple way. And then, you know, attaching a switch interface gives you a way that with any single switch, you can send a click and then they can turn the pages of the book. So, I mean, it can be it doesn't have to be a very busy way to be able to do that. You can do it with your iPad, so that you can take pictures with your iPad and then being able to change the pages within that. So it's easy then you've got your Bluetooth enabled switch interfaces. So all that's happening in an iPad environment now as well. So it doesn't have to be a big complicated piece. If you're looking at, I've got a book and I don't have the ability to do all that, there are hardware versions of page changers. Now I'm right now talking about not having the book read out loud to them. This is just something that's going to change the page. You know, a lot of us have kids that have physical challenges. They're able to read the materials. They just don't want to be tied to a human page turner because we want them to be more independent on their own. So a product like the Flip is something that you can just put any book in. It handles magazines, and all the different things that we have in science come in all different sizes. They come in all different widths. And so you can just simply put a book in the Flip, attach any switch to it, and it can change the pages forward, change it back, and you're ready to go that day right in class. Again, it's not going to electronically read it to them, but it will change the pages for them. Then we get into the things that are going to read out loud to them. How many of you know about the News to You or have subscriptions to News to You? So News to You, for those of you that don't know, it is a weekly subscription. It's a magazine, and it often will have themes. It's, you know, whatever's going on in the world, and sometimes those themes are science-based themes. One of the things that they announced recently at the beginning of October at the Closing the Gap conference is that come January, a lot of these things that people often print out, all of their News to Use newspaper, although you can do things online and have it read electronically to you. If you're downloading it on your iPad and you have your iPad turned on at the system level to talk, so you can talk your News to You. But News to You and the unique curriculum, we'll talk about unique in a couple of slides here, are going paperless. And so that's one of the things, if you've been printing out pages and pages and pages, that they've really been gearing up to not have to be doing all of those things. Other series that have been available for a while are the Start to Finish Literacy Starters, which are the books. Scott's going to take a look at those books and tell you a little bit about them and the different levels at which they're available.
Okay, so the Start to Finish Literacy Starters are from Don Johnston Incorporated. And let's just make sure that we're all mirroring here. There we go. Okay, so there's a series and they come in a kit. And so I'm going to just first of all get the Start to Finish book listed. You get a hard copy. In addition to it, you get the software copy of it. So let me scroll down here and find my Start to Finish. What you'll see is this is launching. The books in a particular area or category will come into 3 different levels. They'll have a book that's written at the emergent level for a reader. I'm going to be showing you the electronic versions so that you don't have to worry about trying to squint and see as I open up the books. But you get the emergent reader. You get a book that's going to be for the transitional reader. Then you get a book also for the conventional reader. So within the same area, and these happen to be in the area of life cycles and that, you can get materials that are at different levels and differentiated for the students that are in your class. So I'm going to go in. It does track students' progress where they left off. There is switch access or scanning built in if you need that. So we'll just take a quick look at the different types of leveled books that would be in here.
A Butterfly is Born by Caroline Musselwhite.
So if an individual is an independent reader, they could go ahead and click Read by Myself, and then they'll just have the electronic version of the book. It won't be read out loud, but they'll be able to utilize a switch or a mouse to advance the pages to be able to participate. Otherwise, if somebody does need to have it read to them, they can click on this button.
All living things have a life cycle. All plants and animals have a life cycle. Even people have a life cycle.
At any point in time, I can have the page read again if I wanted to. Once the animation had finished, I can go on to the next page.
Today, you'll see the life cycle of a butterfly.
And I'm not going to keep going through the book, but what I do want to point out here, for an emergent reader, this sometimes when people look at the text, they think, well, that's going to be too complex. Well, with the emergent reader, it's really about literacy and language bombardment. And so that's why you'll see as the levels, when I transition now, to go to a transitional book, you'll see the text is going to are going to start to be at a level that an individual would read along.
By Jerry Stemich and Karen Erickson.
So now we can do the read with me or
Read with me. When I was a little kid, things were really different. I used to eat what other people wanted.
So in the emergent reader, you saw chunks of text being highlighted to focus them. Now with the transitional reader, it's a highlight one word by word. So a one-to-one correspondence.
Things were really different. I used to eat what other people wanted.
And then after the page initially was read with the highlight word by word, it goes back and does that concept of chunking again. Then if I go and show you a leveled book at a conventional reader, this would be one where one would be possibly reading it more independently.
I Made a Frog by Mary Read to Me. This is a true story. I made a frog.
And then on any of them, as I mentioned, the page could be read again or they could advance it.
I did it by waiting. You can do this too.
In each of the kits also, there's the key vocabulary words for that unit come. You have them where there's sight words, you have picture supports that's already provided, so they're not additional things that you have to end up creating. Okay, but that's a start to finish literacy series, literacy starters.
So one of the things too that we've had people do is that if they've got one of the electronic readers like Win or Read Out Loud or Kurzweil or Read and Write Gold in their school district, they're also having the materials that their students, other students in their classroom are using scanned in or bringing those in electronically through the AIM materials, and using those with their students too, and having them. So you see like the monarch butterfly, that's in Kurzweil. So kids are having those materials in both print and then have them electronically. So sometimes students need to have both the physical book present as well as the electronic book. It helps to have both in their environment to have it that way. And you'll see some example out there where a book is also brailled, it has texture in it, and then a student would have that in their electronic environment as well. So they've got kind of that haptic approach to it, multi-sensory approach to it. So I can hear it, I can feel it, I can touch it, I can see it, and they have all of those pieces to it. One of the teachers that we've worked with in a middle school in California, Anthony Gross, will take the start to finish literacy starters like Scott's just shown you, and then he represents them in a software program called My Own Bookshelf, which is from Soft Touch, which is now owned by Marblesoft. Get all the companies right. And what Anthony does is he then does experiments and has his students in middle school do experiments. They videotape the experiments, and then they put them in My Own Bookshelf, which is a PowerPoint-like program. And so I'm going to take some time here and show you a video of the students doing those, and then the tests that they take afterwards, just so you get a little example of it here. So some of these books are out there that Anthony has. This is
I am a plant.
sorry, I turned my sound off when Scott
I
was,
need water to live.
I have it really in fast
If I do
pace.
not get water, I will die. This is my friend Pansy. She was a plant with flowers, too. No one watered her. She died.
Oops.
Please water us so we do not die. Thank you.
So he does very short,
The end.
he does very short stories for his students. So he has students with cognitive challenges in middle school. And again, these books, there's probably 5 or 6 different versions of these books that he does. And he's trying to teach the concept of watering keeps plants alive. If you don't water them, they will die. And he'll do the experiments with them. Everybody has their own plants that they water, that they don't water, and then they follow that along. And then what you'll see is they would have also done this with, so this is Devin watching herself doing the experiment. And My Own Bookshelf,
Plants need water too.
has the ability to put the image, the sound, and a video. So just a really quick clip. And so they watch it. They've gotten the book. There's a series on plants in the start to finish literacy starters. So he combines lots of these things. And then you'll see one of the students taking a test at a product called Test Me Score Me that I'll show you.
Water, light, air, and food.
And in Test Me Score Me, it gives you the ability to present things in different formats.
What does a plant need?
So what does a plant need? And then you're able to use the same images, so you can bring in the same images from the books or from the stories that you used. Now Devin, who you saw, gets distracted when she is using anything to access the computer. So if she's going to use the mouse, she starts playing with the mouse, she starts playing with the track on the laptop, and she's not concentrating on the screen like you just saw with Sarah. And so, that takes away from finding out what it is that Devin really knows. So one of the concepts that Scott and I often talk about that we got from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, they call red, yellow, green. We boil it down to red light, green light. And it's this idea of there's the concepts, the cognitive concepts and curricular concepts that we want our students to work on. That's a difficult concept. It's a red light thing. So when they're using the technology, we want it to be a green light for them, something that's an easy thing to do. And so with Sarah, she could use the trackball, or she could use the mouse rather, very easy. So then we could give her the mouse to take a test, on the concepts that were hard. But now with Devin, the mouse is a very hard thing, so I can't test her cognitive knowledge, which is also a hard thing, with the mouse. It's not fair to her. And this is why with some kids, you get meltdowns, you get blow-ups, and you don't find out what it is that they really know. And so what Anthony does is that he then will, with Devin, is use the adult.
We're going to take a test. You're going to point, just like that.
So he still presents it in the computer format. So she's still at the computer. She's still going to be hearing the electronic voice that all the materials were presented to, but he's now going to do the clicking. She's going to point to the things that are dead, so it's still the same content, but she will point and then he's going to do the click.
Do this. Hands down. Point.
Next one. Next one.
Which plant is dead?
Point to dead. Show me dead. Which plant is dead? Point.
And then he just clicks on whatever her first answer is.
Which plant is dead?
Which plant is dead? Point to dead. Point to dead.
No. Which plant needs water?
And then they can work on the different concepts of which is dead, which needs water, without the interference of the mouse piece. Yeah. Back to the PowerPoint. Many of you have out there, or you've probably seen passed around, one of the curriculums that's out there from Attainment, which is the Teaching to Standards Science. I'll get all the words in the right place sooner or later. So this is one of the ones that has units in it. It has all the materials. You've got the workbooks out there. Remember, they're not takeaway prizes. They have the whole kit. They've got the Earth, which fell at some point down here. So they have different materials to do the experiments here for you. They've got a workbook. They've got all the different questions that go along with the different units. They've got vocabulary pieces that go along with it. It's a really great kit to take you through, and pretty much the school year to go through the different concepts. Some of the teachers that I've worked with will use it to supplement the other materials, other units that they're going throughout the year with the standard curriculum. This becomes either a background knowledge piece or it becomes their entire unit. And then they're also doing other materials with it. So you'll see some of the science work. These are the workbooks that go along with the unit. And we've had people, some of the staff that we know out in Orange County, California, have used the electronic files that you get along with it to do classroom suite activities and activities in Clicker, so that they're doing electronic writing to go along with it. Scott's going to show you on the iPad one of the apps from Attainment called Symbol
Support.
Symbol Support, so that you can do symbolating to add to some of the materials.
So it's the one in the very center of the screen that I'm actually activating. I had already typed in here. So those of you that were familiar with News to You, if I scroll down here, you'll see that as I begin to type, I could just say, what is the first layer of the Earth? Earth's crust. And then I could put answers in there. I have the ability here with any document that I create I could email it. I can email it as a PDF so that I would be able to have it off of my iPad as well, or print it out as a hardware one. But then what I also have the capability of doing is using the built-in speech of the operating system. And so if I did have a student that needed to have this read to them, I could select the text, and then I have the speak button there that I can actually have it read back. And then it will also highlight the word by word. So if somebody did need to have picture symbol support at the same time of hearing the text, that they could have it done in electronic format. And this again is an app from a attainment company called Symbol Support that allows you to create items on it.
And so we're used to seeing that in Windows and Mac, so you might use Picture It to do it in that environment. A lot of people know Writing with Symbols 2000, and the update to that is called Sim Writer. So we've got that in a computer format, and now it's in an app format from Attainment.
And documents can be saved, and you can also have additional symbol libraries available as well. So you can choose what symbol sets that you want to have access to. Okay. Okay.
So again, all of the kits and the materials that come with the attainment, and then what people are doing, just adding to it so that you can enrich what it is that you're doing. And then they have, you know, an early version of that for K3. So it's then another one of the ones to take a look at what they're doing with their science curriculums. Another thing for what I mentioned earlier is that people that have the unique curriculum, many of the strands are built around the science themes. So you have science activities. Many of the books that are in the library have a science theme. In fact, I was looking around yesterday, and so there's things, and some of the new books are on Jane Goodall and some other things that have a science background to them. And one of the nice things that when they're in there, that they're written at multiple levels. So you have kids, we often have kids with multiple abilities that you have in group, and so that you can have books that are written at, they might have a single word, they might have a phrase, they might have a sentence, they might have 2 sentences, and everybody can be on the same topic. And again, then those books can also be opened up electronically and have those read out loud as well.
And News to You and Unique are subscription sites, but something to keep in the back of your mind, they always make the summer unit free. So if it's something that you want to think about, checking out, you can, visit the Unique website, towards the end of May, and the summer unit is always up there free.
Another place that has unit curriculum is from Amy Solutions, and they first got it started doing things on paper, and so we've got one of their units up here, and it got started because Amy was a girl that needed to have her curriculum adapted, and so her mom and all of the teachers and the SLPs and the OTs and the AT person all actually started a company around this. And so they had probably about 15 or 16 units that you could buy, all the materials, and then they went to where you could get the CD and print it all out yourself. And now it's all on software, and now it's gone to the app world as well. Not all of the apps, not all of the software programs have been converted to apps, but Scott's going to show you one on software, and then you can take a look at in the app store too.
Okay, let's. Okay, the one that I'm going to show you from Amy Solutions is in the Click to Read series. And it will come. There we go. There is, as Kelly had mentioned, they do have these available as apps. If you want to try one out to see, now this doesn't fall into our focus here with science, but there is an app for Click to Read that's free, and it will always be free, called A Leader Is. And so if you want to try it out to see if it's going to work for your students before you make purchases of other apps, you definitely can. Again, that's called A Leader Is. I'm going to go into the folder for Amy Solutions here, and you'll see that with each title, there's usually 3 or 4 different items. So I have All About Me, so I have 4 different stories about the senses. I can go into animal habitats. I'll just go into one of them and so that you can see kind of what the construct of the book is. So I'll open up Pond Life. Little music to get you going started this morning. There are, I'm not going to go in depth with the settings, but do know that there is the capability for scanning built in. You can decide what type of reinforcement that you want to use, male voice, female voice, so a lot that you have control over within the app. What you're seeing on the right-hand side here is the ability of what the students could interact with. The very first one is a very basic, just read the story. With each mouse click or switch click, it would advance the page and read the next one. So we'll just give you a couple.
Pond life.
I'm going to be using my mouse as my switch. I click it again.
This is a frog.
There's some picture symbol support that later the individuals are going to be able to interact with.
Frog lives around the pond. This is a mosquito.
We have lots of them in Wisconsin.
Mosquitoes.
They're not as
fly
big as
around
Minnesota
the
mosquitoes,
pond.
but. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Then the story, so the one is just to introduce the individual to the story. The second one then is that they can interact with it. So when I click on the interactive story, it's going to read.
This is a frog.
But now on each of the picture down below here, I can click on it, or I could scan to it
Frog.
and interact with it.
This is
If I had a touch screen, I could be touching it and interacting and retelling the story. And that's how each,
frog lives around the pond. Frog.
so that the student is interacting with the vocabulary. Then there's 3 different levels of the student retelling the story. So the level 1 is going to be,
Pond life.
pretty much error-free.
This is a frog.
So the sentence is up here, and then the student needs to complete that thought,
Frog.
and then they get access to the arrow to move forward.
The frog lives around the pond. Around.
And so forth. You'll see at the level 2,
Pond life. This is a frog.
now I have more choices. I could get it wrong.
Mosquito.
I could get it wrong again.
Mosquito.
And I think it's after the 3rd time.
Mosquito. Try frog.
It's going to gray out so that it reduces my choices so I'm not stuck in this perpetual making an error.
The frog lives around the pond. Around.
So the student's retelling. And then there's the level
Pond
3
life.
where they're going to have to put the sequence the pictures in the correct order.
This is a frog. This
Get it right.
is frog.
And then I
The
can move
frog
forward.
lives around the pond.
So a lot of activities centered around here. And then they have the ability to show what they know. And in each of these areas, they can either do a bingo, they can do a vocabulary practice, a concentration game, and they have 3 different levels of them. You can also customize how many cards. You either have 6, 8, or 12 cards to play with. I'll keep it simple today. The concentration levels, you'll see at level 1, you're going to be pretty much matching object to object, picture to picture. When we get into level 2, you're going to start to match the picture to the vocabulary word. And then level 3 is going to be dealing with vocabulary.
Concentration.
So this is
Find
with
2 that are the same.
the vocabulary words from my story.
Tadpole. Mosquito. Sorry, those don't match. Lily pad. Tadpole.
Oh,
Sorry, that's not
is it down
right.
here? Thank you.
Tadpole. Tadpole. You
We have to do
found
this
2
together.
that match.
And then you
Lily pad.
Left.
left.
Mosquito.
Oh.
That's not right. Lily pad. Lily pad. Those
See,
2
go with your
are the
first
same.
instinct. And you,
Mosquito. Mosquito.
so you can
Right.
play with the Leader Is app to have your own concentration
You
games,
want
but
to play again?
it will do. But a lot of activities to be able to center around here in the different units. So that's the Amy's Solutions Click to Read series is what the whole series is called. And MarbleSoft is carrying those now. Okay.
We're going to stay in MarbleSoft land. Ooh. I think I'm going to have to quit out and start it up again. My whole screen just switched right. So this is another. This is another company that MarbleSoft carries, which is Soft Touch. And they've got 4 or 5 titles that are set up for science. And one of the nice things with these titles is that they're already set up for multiple methods of access. And then within them, there are different topics, and these topics can be intermixed. Anybody have a favorite today? Land. Now, here's another thing that they do with their presentation, because with some of our students, it takes a while to get them to attend to the screen before an item is actually released, kind of visually released on it, so that you can do things with some flashing on the screen. For other people, flashing is not good, but for some people that might need that before a visual is uncovered, or something that might be just faded. So I'm going to go halfway in between for you all here today. And then also how things are activated. The other nice thing is all of these things also work well with your Prometheum or your smart boards, so kids can be going up and using that right as a touch surface, or if you have a tap screen, that works really nice with those. But it also is whether or not they release or immediately when they touch it. So you can really customize it to the individual student. This series also has data collection. So I could have logged in as a student and it will follow what I'm doing. This is your language piece, how much information is being presented to them. So again, I'm going to go kind of in the middle with short phrases. And then you can also get rid of that clacking sound if that bothers them. And then also whether or not you're using the mouse, so the mouse is active across the screen, or if it needs to stay in one location because you're using a single switch, so that somebody else will need to put the mouse at its location, so your switch user is just using their switch. Here's another nice customization, so that you can get a really large cursor if that's needed. And then the changeable format is you're going to see how many items are on the screen and if those items move around on the screen. This is a great customization option for when you're looking at, I have a student that just needs to target one item on the screen the whole way up to 9 choices. And you're able then to say where you're going to fill. So if I'm just going to have one item out of 3 or all 3 items filled. And here are all the items from land, and I can say, well, I want the rocks to be in that location. And then I want the erosion to be over here. So you can get really specific about where your targets are for the student that you're working with. Here's where you save your data. How many times are they going to be presented with it before it stops? I'm not going to save data right now. And now what happens is that the student then is presented their option of which one they're going to see first. This is this. Attend to the screen, attend to the screen before the item is presented to you. And this was one of the things that we had control over.
Hard.
All right, so this is all the properties of rocks. All right, so that we would gone through that and gone all through all the information. Once we had all that information, because we're trying to save on time right here, now I can go through and be tested on that information. Because you're quick learners. With the Test Me, Score Me series, there are customizations that can be done that go along with each of the units, or you just make your own test, which is what you saw Devin and Sarah doing in the video, were tests that he had made individually for them. We're just going to take a test that's pre-made to go along with Earth. You can, and then what you have when you have it customized is you would have all of your students here lined up, and it would go right into their customizations. I'm just going to choose somebody that takes the test with mouse clicking, and I'm going to give myself a stop so I can stop the test at any point. But you can also say that they can listen to it again, they can go back and retake a screen. And then here's all of, we took the land information, so we want to be quizzed on the land information with an audio and an audio visual cue. And again, here's where I can say I just want them to be tested on soil, rocks. We did the thing on the rocks. Whoops, just rocks, Kelly. Oh, God. Deselect all, just do rocks.
Select the test to begin.
Ooh, and we're on very fast speech.
Find rocks.
And I just chose one. But again, I can choose however many targets. Did I not pick my ability to go up in? What method did I choose?
I didn't see.
Good job.
Oh.
You have finished taking this test.
All right, we chose a really fast test with just one target, but you know, we can set them up for more than that. We're going to get out of here and show you how you can do this with Clicker.
Clicker is from Crick Software. It comes from the UK. You can get a demo version of it. It's either Mac or PC. It in of itself is kind of a talking word processor. You can have electronic word banks. You can make your own items. You can make your own books and things like that. I'm not taking the time to show you that portion of it. I want to show you some of their pre-made activities. So if I go to some of their Clicker sets, you'll see that they have a whole series called Find Out and Write About. And a number of them fit really well into our science area here. One of them that I have installed on this computer is the life cycles. And so in all of the Find Out and Write About series, they kind of fall into this area where there's going to be 3 different books. The content of the books are going to be the same. How the books are laid out and the content is laid out is going to be different. So if I go into a book 1, this is just a description page about the book. And now I can go into any type of item that I want to go into. If we've been doing the frog, you'll see here in a book 1, each fact is its own button to read. And
A tadpole comes from an egg.
And these can be
A
scanned
frog is an amphibian.
as I click on each one.
It has smooth, slimy skin.
On each of these pages, after a student interacts and reads with it, there's going to be a level where they can write about it. And you'll see the changes within the levels of supports with writing. When I click on the write about, you'll see here I have sentence beginnings and sentence endings. And that's all that I'm doing. I'm clicking on these to put them in, click the period.
A frog is an amphibian.
It has smooth, slimy skin.
It has smooth, slimy skin.
So that's a book 1 of Find Out and Write About. I'm going to go back here in levels so that I can show you a book 2. You'll see the content again is going to be similar as I come into with the frog, but now things are going to be laid out in paragraph format. I could click and have that read to me as well.
A.
Or a single word support if I wanted to. Now when I get into the write about part, you'll see there's a change. Again, now it's not just a sentence beginning and ending, but it's scaffolded so that the individual has to construct the sentence even more from additional vocabulary words. They're always free to type in here as well. If the words are not in the word bank itself. There's an on-screen keyboard, so and that can be scanned if somebody needs to have access to that as well, or if they need a dwell feature or do the click. And then the third book, if we go back, the third book is going to have similar content, a little additional text might be added into it, a little bit more robust. And then the writing is going to be set up so that it's more word bank area rather than the picture support that the individuals have. And any of these grid sets and stuff like that can be altered and adapted. But that's to give you a sampling of the different levels of find out and write about. And that again is from Crick software.
All right, well, as we roll through wrapping up here, talk about just some of the manipulative things so that the other kinds of things that you do in science for labs and some of the switch adapted materials that you might need to be doing. So some of the switch adapted materials that you can get from AbleNet with adapting your scissors, using their alternate for some of the things that you can do on spinners. Enabling Devices is another company that has switch adapted pouring mechanisms. We've also been using from Technology for Education, looking at the microscopes that they've got, which are typical microscopes, but we've also been intermixing them with some of the other technologies so that kids can be looking at what's through the microscope, but you look at it on the computer format. You're looking at it on the computer screen, what's going on through the microscope if they can't look through the microscope lens. And then, all the kinds of things that they can do to interface with regular ed technology. So if they can't use the regular mouse, are they using the head mouse, or using something like the Tobii PCI for their eye gaze, because then you can be using any regular ed software that way with your eye gaze technologies. And then for talking in science, one of the things that we've been looking at are some of the pre-programmed things. So from AMDI with their Smart series, with the 128, the 32, and the 8.
Your heart can,
Oh, so here.
your bones can, your lungs can, provide the frame for your body.
And with this series, the things are already done on a pre-programmed chip. And so with the chip, you just take that out. You've got 6 levels. And with this one, with the science vocabulary, all I have to do is take out the overlays. The overlays are already done on that chip. I don't have to turn a knob or anything. So for
Safety glasses, a stopwatch, a magnifying glass. I would use a ruler.
So they have to tell you what kind of item that they need to use for during the experiment, or
I need help. A stopwatch.
what they need help with during an experiment. There's 6 different overlays that go with each of the packages. And the packages are in the area of reading and writing and circle time. There's a news to you package, but there's, I think, 3 different science packages.
I think it is a loud sound. I think it will attract the magnet. I think it will not attract the magnet.
So it's really nice because of a kid who could change their own overlays, but they haven't been able to be independent with their communication system because they couldn't turn the knob to change the vocabulary. That works out really nicely. And so this is the AMDI. And a lot of people know the Tech Talk and the Tech Speak. So this is that next level up with the Smart series. All right, so to finally wrap this piece up, don't forget all the other kinds of things that you can do with the sequencing devices. They can be saying the directions for lab. One of the nice ones that has a feature, the Smooth Talker from Inclusive TLC. Not only can it be a sequencer, but it has this converse mode that if you plug a second switch in it, if you have somebody that's a switch banger, they can't go again until the next person takes their turn. So they say their item, then a friend can say something, then they get to say, then a friend takes their turn. And so it's a really nice feature built into that Smooth Talker. And we've got one up here if you want to try it after the session here ends. So there's just some really nice examples on Caroline Musselwhite's website about what different kinds of things can be promoted when you talk during science class and when you're taking turns and all of those examples. So all the different things that can happen during group work and just some of those low-tech things that you can get from some of the things that people are doing from LS&S and Maxi Aids. We're using those kinds of tools, those low-tech tools during science lab time. All right, and Scott showed you some of the examples in writing. We're doing that with PixWriter as well. So of course we're totally out of time. Don't forget to trial things before you go out and buy it. Be a good user of the stuff that you have already, and make sure that you're using the technologies that you have to their fullest. And please, if there's anything that we've gone through also quickly and you want to follow up on the handouts that are up online are a couple things. You have all of these slides are on the handouts. You have a resource list that's up there. You have the core standards document that Scott talked about from the very beginning. And then you have our emails on our websites that get to us. So please do follow up. And thanks for coming and spending the time with us.
Thank you.
And all the things that got passed around, if they can just make their way to the middle, that would be terrific.